every major medical association in the United States is conclusively agreeing upon something, that gender affirming care is a valid treatment for people who are experiencing gender dysphoria. If it's just like across the board, it seems every major medical association agrees on this. And then this is coming out. He's like, oh, genital mutilation, blah, the Dragon of Chaos, blah, they're cutting people's off, like all this kind of freak out. Well, yeah, I mean, if I was working in a field that does deal with people who experience gender dysphoria and does deal with people who experience suicidal ideation, I think I would be like, I don't know if this should have a license. I don't know if he should be allowed to do what he's clearly doing openly in public all the time, every chance he gets. It's like, hey, here's a microphone, Jordan Peterson. He, she, they, or their Caesar, blah, blah. Like every single time that happens, I would be like, well, yeah, I think we should probably cut the off. Like, let's just kind of like say we're good on this, you know?
Nearly half of them are...
Oh, God, bloody hell.
Well, I said something about Trudeau.
Oh.
I said something about one of his top aides.
Clinical psychologist turned right-wing media figure Jordan Peterson was recently on the Joe Rogan podcast, where they discussed what is happening right now with his license. So, before I get to the clip, this is a quick breakdown here from CBC News. The College of Psychologists of Ontario, which is the regulatory body for psychologists in Ontario, has ordered Peterson, who has gained international fame for his best-selling self-help books and lectures, to undergo a media training program, saying some of his tweets may be degrading the profession and even raise questions about his abilities as a psychologist. So, I'm going to get to some of those complaints, be very specific about them before or after I show the Peterson clip here. And I'm going to say, the conclusion here isn't as clear as it may appear to be. So, before I get to all of that and the conclusion, let me first here get to Peterson on Joe Rogan's podcast. I'm going to play a couple of clips here that summarize what is going on.
So we decided to have this conversation because of what's going on with you in Canada.
Oh, yeah.
And that your clinical psychology license is in jeopardy because you have opinions about politics that they disagree with, which is...
because you have abhorrent online behavior. Yes, if you want to describe what it's for. Yes, objectively abhorrent online behavior. And so there are governing bodies, Joe. I don't know if, how honest Jordan's going to be throughout this process. There's governing bodies that give out licensing for people to practice various fields. Doctors have licenses, for example. Simply put, I'm sure you can understand this. Airline pilots have driver's licenses, as in they have to have a license to be able to transport people commercially, because it is obviously a very important job. And if someone were to not know what they were doing, they could potentially result in mass death and destruction. So you understand why these kind of things exist. And so if that governing body has basically taken upon themselves that this celebrity person who does have a license but doesn't practice anymore, this celebrity who has a license and used to practice back in the day, has kind of gone off the transphobic deep end, is just like a fucking first-rate bigot, and they're also not currently, seeing a whole bunch of, let's just say, clients, and a bunch of his own clients come out and start, reporting things to the board about both what he is doing and his online behavior, which again is mostly centered around hate speech. I don't think it's outrageous that, again, that licensing body would be like, we're going to revoke your license unless you take a course. you take a little course just again to kind of learn why what you're doing is massively yikesy. And again, kind of it reflects upon us. Again, if we license you and you're getting out there and you're just unloading, I don't know why you are so obsessed with Elliot Page, why you can't let him and any aspect of his life leave your mind, and why you're just so furious about this, and why it's continuously breaking your brain, and why you're so fucking embarrassing. I don't know. This is your battle, your cross to bear, Jordan. I'm not trying to tell you what to do, but I am telling you to take this course. That's if you want the license. You get a choice. You absolute freedom to do what you want, or you get this license to again practice a field you don't actually actively do right now.
Very dangerous and bizarre turn of events.
Well, it's your fault, actually. You know, I
Oh,
told you, I
God,
think,
bloody
a
hell.
week or so ago when we talked about
Bloody
this.
hell.
Okay, so let me give you some background
Okay.
here. So
I want to know how it's my fault.
I will. I'll tell you. A lot of things are your fault, as it turns out.
Oh,
so
no.
Yeah. So the College of Psychologists clean up your room.
Oh, come on, Joe. You've been a bad little boy, Joe. Come on. Daddy's here. Yeah, Lobster Daddy's here to spank you. To spank you. Bloody hell. Your ass is going to be sore.
Has basically levied
Donkeytron,
what are equivalent
2000,
to
thank
about
you.
13 lawsuits against me simultaneously. Now, the reason I call them lawsuits is because they're actions undertaken on behalf of a complainant. Now, the complainant can be anyone anywhere in the world who complains about me for any reason. They don't have to be former clients.
So you wouldn't recommend this particular psychiatrist, is what you're saying? Yeah, I don't think so. I mean, you got to understand, if every major medical association in the United States is conclusively agreeing upon something, that gender-affirming care is a valid treatment for people who are experiencing gender dysphoria. If it's just like across the board, seems every major medical association agrees on this. And then this motherfucker is coming out and he's like, oh, genital mutilation, blah, the Dragon of Chaos, but they're cutting people's sticks off. Like all this kind of freak out and shit. But yeah, I mean, if I was working in a field that does deal with people who experience gender dysphoria and does deal with people who experience suicidal ideation, I think I would be like, I don't know if this motherfucker should have a license. I don't know if he should be allowed to do what he's clearly doing openly in public all the time, every chance he gets. It's like, hey, here's a microphone, Jordan Peterson. He, she, they, or the Caesar, blah, blah. Like every single time that happens, I would be like, well, yeah, I think we should probably cut this motherfucker off. Like, let's just kind of like say we're good on this shit, you know?
Clients. They don't even have to be anybody I've ever met. They don't even have to have met anybody I've ever met. So, you know.
So it could be someone online.
Well, it is. All this is pretty much, all these complaints are someone online. You know, and it's so...
I know David's going to mention it. He's very thorough. He's a very good... Hey, I got the tabs, the receipts for all of you. So he'll bring this up, but it should be mentioned. So Jordan Peterson tweeted out a link to all of the personal information of all the people that would have been on this like governing board and had to delete that link. So it's this really inflammatory like fucking statement by him, you know, like, well, yeah, here's the buckos who are trying to, you know, silence my speech, and doxes all of them. So he had to take it off his own Google Drive. So when you click on the link now, it goes to this new link that's like, this has been deleted. And it's so funny. He's like, he is so embarrassing on social media. There's a lot of people who are a variety of things, especially on the right. Some people are like, they're scary mean. They're scary liars. Andy, no. Oh, that's dangerous what you've just done. People are going to get hurt. That's frightening, the lies that you were spreading. Jordan Peterson, a lot of the time, it's just deeply embarrassing for him and anyone involved who takes him seriously, because it's like, no amount of authoritarianism will ever seduce me. I do not find her curves delicious. Like, what the fuck are you doing, dog? Why are you talking about what makes you horny on Maine? Like, you're supposed to be this renowned fucking psychologist, fucking, you know, in the pinnacle of academia. Here he is, Jordan Peterson, yes, esteemed, dignified, to speak on issues ranging in the true master of our time. And you're like, God damn, you're just going off about how you don't find the Sports Illustrated model sexy. And even your own fans clowned on you because it was like, but she's objectively hot. It's like, you totally would though, you know, like everyone knows you would. Like, you're just like, oh God, no, I would never just spit on her. No, she doesn't look like grandmother. You know, anything that he's throwing out there.
Preposterous, because I have 20 million people following me on social media, you know, and God only knows how many views of my videos, for example, or the interviews you and I have done.
Oh, yeah.
Tens of millions. And like, what? How many people complained? 20? Literally half of them are... Well, I said something about Trudeau.
I didn't know the numbers were that high. That's a new revelation. I thought it was like 5 or 6. Some of those people are his ex-clients. That's really bad. And all you've been asked is to take a course? I'm astounded. Like, I'll be honest, that seems like a very, very measured response on their part. To be like, well, we know the stakes are pretty high, and he's going to turn this into a big thing. He's going to be a diva about this. There's no question. Like, he's got just fucking diva energy, and he's just fucking frothing at the bit to get out there and be like, why, they're silencing him, bloody hell, how could they do this? Like, so they see the writing on the wall. So they're like, we have received our 20th complaint. The 20th person has complained about Jordan Peterson. We should probably do a bit of an investigation into his activity and the fact that he still has a license.
I said something about one of his top aides. I said something about Jacinda Ardern. I said something about an Ottawa City Councillor in relationship to the trucker convoy.
The truckers. By the way, the tweeting question, like, it was an occupation. It was an occupying force. There was a lot of the far right who were associated, and some of the founding members actually are directly associated with the far right in Canada. The whole thing was pretty concrete at this point. We've already had hearings in this country to discuss what happens and the use of emergency measures as well. Like, if Canada was legitimately this authoritarian fucking communist nightmare that people in America sometimes seem to think it is when they point towards Canada, and it's like, oh my God, can you believe that the Canadian government used the Emergency Measures Act? It's something I'd never even heard existed until now. This is communism. Canada has gone full communist. And it's like, you can dispute whether or not this is an overreach of power and if this is disproportionately negatively going to affect certain groups, especially those that are already marginalized in community, namely Indigenous people in Canada and activists, land defenders, people who are allies who fight for Indigenous rights, environmental protectors, stuff like that. Those are people who were very, surveyed and definitely, if there is more governmental power, they are probably the ones who are going to be negatively impacted by that. But this is so different than what you were describing. This was something that was enacted for a very short period of time. This was something that could be turned off at any point by authorities other than Trudeau, elected officials other than Trudeau. In addition to that, there is a whole inquiry that took place, a public inquiry of which everything is like being televised, into the use of that and the authorization of that to find out whether or not it was an abuse of power. There could not be more public checks and balances going on here. It's like it's almost boringly Canadian how much shit is just like, well, yes, but actually this is something that can be turned off at any time by once again yet another vote in Parliament. They can actually oversee his authority. This is not like a draconian dictatorship that he's impacted. It only lasted a couple days, and in addition to that, there's now going to be a complete public inquiry, a transparent public inquiry as to whether or not he was like abusive, like all that kind of shit. It's like such a stretch to be making posts about how this is like the fucking dictatorship of the Trudeau, the man who was democratically elected into power multiple times, and it's a dictatorship and no one knows how bad it'll get.
Oh, I said something about climate.
Like, the right are, like, especially pundits in America, they're all talking about invading Canada right now. Have you, like, has anyone seen this or noticing this? Like, it started out as a meme, clearly, and expanded as a meme. When I see people like fucking, Tinkle being like, I would never join the army unless it's to liberate Canada, blah, blah, blah. Like, yeah, okay, epic, fucking cool. But now a lot of the pundits are saying it, a lot. Like, they're kind of sliding from the, it's a meme to, we should kind of talk about this because, Canada could use a little liberating. After all, they are kind of under an authoritarian, draconian dictatorship, a communist dictatorship by Justin Trudeau, who, of course, works for China. These are dangerous times. And so, I mean, if we're going to strike the Chinese, we should probably get at the Canadians first. We'll take the Canadians down, use that as a base or hub, and then we can, be aggressors towards other areas.
Every single one of the complaints is political.
All right, so that's not exactly true. I'm going to get to the specifics around the complaints. That said, there is a debate worth having here around what this should mean for your clinical license. So to be clear, he's not potentially getting his, degree revoked or anything. It's his clinical license. He no longer has a private practice. He suspended it back in 2017. He hasn't gone back since. He's making an estimated, millions upon millions with the Daily Wire, considering what they just offered Steven Crowder, $50 million over 4 years. So you can bet Peterson's
somewhere in
making some
that
good money there.
Yes,
it's very unlikely he's going to go back to an actual practice and have actual patients. So this is really about, should he be able to hold a clinical license with the kinds of public statements that he is making?
Yes.
Even if
and it's the most basic argument. It's like this whole thing has been used by the right and even some liberals, like clueless liberals, to talk about free speech and that. And I see Americans doing this. I don't know if it's because a lot of American media is just run through so many filters, but to look at the story of Jordan Peterson, to think it's like that this is a free speech issue. And then even if you despise Jordan Peterson, doesn't matter what your take is on him, you can hate him, okay? You can think he's a bad guy, but you should defend to the death his right to have those opinions and say them, because that's what this is about. And it's like, no. Okay, so do you know that, like, so doctors in the United States, they have medical licenses that can be revoked. I mean, this is a good thing that this is in place, because every now and then you do have doctors that do really fucking fucked up shit. They should not be allowed to endanger human life. So we license them. There's a bunch of stuff that we do that for. In fact, you might be familiar with this process if you drive a car. If you drive a car, you most likely have a driver's license. You've had to go through some checks and balances to achieve the ability to drive that car. So it's okay, you understand. So in this case, he doesn't drive a car anymore. He doesn't drive a car at all. He not only doesn't drive a car, but he has, with his very public platform, been making statements about how epic it is when you drink and drive and how amazing that is, and everyone should be doing it all the time. And that can directly endanger other people who might watch him and also drive cars. And so he doesn't drive one anymore and never will again. He's got a limo driver. So why is it that they keep giving him a license? What's the point at this stage? You can apply this to an airline pilot. And in this case, yeah, if 20 people have complained, including past clients of his, about his behavior, and this encompasses not only his online behavior but other forms of what he says. Like, it's not unusual at all. If anything, I think they're taking like a measured response, because again, it's like, hey, you just have to take a course, Jordan. That's it. You can get all the free speech you want for the low cost of one like course. It's probably online.
he doesn't have a private practice. So just to be clear on that, this from CBC, Peterson gave up his clinical practice when he gained a global profile, but he said he doesn't want to give up his license. Quote, "I deserve it. I earned it. I haven't done anything to justify suspending it, and I don't want to give the hyenas their bones." So, look, I understand where he's coming from, even though I do tend to think this is more about media attention for him as opposed to him actually needing this clinical license, because again, he doesn't need it. He doesn't have a practice. But still, based on, the principle of it, from his position, with his mindset with his position on the issue, I can understand wanting to still have your clinical license even if you're not going to use it. Now, he also went on Twitter to say, to clarify, it's been decided.
By the way, you still get to keep putting doctor in front of your name. You still get to ask that people refer to you as Dr. Jordan Peterson. Like when someone's like, "Oh, hi, Jordan," you can be like, "Oh, that bloody hell, doctor to you."
I either submit to social media communication,
refer to me as Dr. Daddy,
disciplinary
Dr. Lobster
hearing,
Daddy,
and possible suspension of my clinical license and the right to represent myself as a psychologist. So, I mean, this is so base. Like, this is nothing. They aren't.
Yeah, no, it really is.
They're giving him a bone here. They're saying, hey, despite all of the garbage that you've...
I know I initially said I thought it was a flex. My read on that was wrong, because I'm like, this kind of seems like something that's just so small and petty that they're almost just like, we know he won't do this. But like this in actual rationality probably is more of a nightmare for them than they would have wanted, especially the amount of attention that it's generating. So yeah, it seems a lot more like it's like a lot of reasons why we shouldn't be giving you a license, especially if you were directly in a field in which you are advocating for things that will endanger potential clients in that field. That's 100% true. Jordan Peterson, his rhetoric and the things that he talks about, his crusade, his transphobic hatred, vile hate speech that he spews, that stuff is flying in the face of science in his own profession. The vast consensus of it. Every major medical association in the United States conclusively agreeing on this. So if he's going out there constantly saying all these horrifying things about trans people, and lies, by the way. They are lies. They are ascientific lies, pseudoscientific fucking dreck garbage, then it's not beyond the realm of possibility that they might want to revoke your license, you know, in addition to everything else.
Said publicly, and I'm going to get to examples.
He cured my bonitis.
Despite all of that, all you have
Dr.
to
Nick.
do is take some basic social media communication course, and then you can keep your license.
It's fucking nothing.
I think his real position here, and he understands this wouldn't be an issue. It's whatever. But the real issue for him is that he doesn't want to change the way he acts online, because as part of his contract with the Daily Wire, he has to be this ridiculous person to continue being relevant. So if he takes this course and then just keeps doing what he's doing, then he's likely at that point going to face an actual revoking of his license, which he may anyways if he doesn't take this course. So it's all just like in any other situation, this would not be a big deal. This is like a slap on the wrist. Just take a basic training course, and he won't even do that. But again, we're going to get to the debate around should he even be asked to do this. So in a statement to Global News, the CPO said the college is not authorized to discuss this matter as per the confidentiality provisions of SEC. We'll get to even more specifics around why some of these are a problem, but Peterson was temporarily suspended.
His tweet in response to a Sports Illustrated swimsuit cover of a plus-size model, in which he said, "Sorry, not beautiful, and no amount of authoritarian tolerance is going to change that." It's so deeply embarrassing.
Their position here is that, yes, even though he doesn't have a...
Like, that's the shit that, like, you know, a creepy uncle would say, and then, like, have the fucking aunts walk up behind, like, "Stop being fucking weird." And it's like, wow, what bloody hell, I can't even express myself anymore. What's going, is this Nazi Germany? No authoritarianism is going to ever make me find her sexy.
Yeah. Practice, this doesn't have to do with any sort of patient psychologist. The first allegation is that he, a licensed psychologist, made a joke about suicide directed at someone on Twitter. Here's what else it shows. So this joke is here. So this person is talking about
his defense of this, by the way, so he went on his daughter, the Scurvy Queen. He went on the Scurvy Queen's show, and they're having a little conversation. And in the middle of that, the Scurvy Queen is just straight up like, "So you know they're accusing you of mocking someone and mocking suicide." He's like, "Oh yeah, okay, a simple joke that I made. Apparently, yeah, you're free to leave this planet, as if that is in some way the same thing." And it's like, it's still fucked up for, like, you know, a practicing psychologist to be doing this shit.
Based on the record of human behavior, we are already overpopulating the small world. So this person's complaining about overpopulation, and then Peterson replies saying, "You're free to leave at any point."
So I think this is one of the leaks. It is against every clinical standard and best practices of the U.S. National Association of Social Workers Code of Ethics to make light or encourage or joke about or reference the topic of suicide in a manner that is not grounded in safety, prevention, and evidence-based therapeutic intervention. That seems reasonable. It seems reasonable for people who are in a profession in which they usually try to help people who are dealing with things like suicidal ideation, to have those guidelines and ethics. That's probably a good thing, but better that this exists than does it not, you know? I'm sure the Canada standards of professional psychology and social work are similar. I'm submitting a formal complaint, not for Jordan Peterson's original tweet, but for the fact that he just shared it again, promoting the idea that what he did was perfectly fine. Thank you for your time.
I mean, it's probably not the right thing for a psychologist to say, but it's kind of a, it's a joke. This one I wouldn't take too seriously personally. This one here, a tweet from Peterson during the Freedom Convoy when he opined Children's Aid didn't need to get involved.
I don't know if I agree with that because of his reach. Like, you have to remember, Jordan Peterson is like, he's an institution now. He's globally known. He's massive, millions of book sales, blah, blah, blah. He's a whole little right-wing empire into of himself. And so to have someone that high of a profile with, again, a license from a clinical psychologist organization, again, I think it's totally within the reasonable grounds for them to want to take action on that.
Psychologists have to report when a child is in need of protection. The complaint alleges the tweet undermined public trust in Peterson's judgment in this regard. So basically, this was around the Freedom Convoy when children were spotted there in situations that were not healthy for them to be in. And here they are, the police saying, maybe we should, we're considering having to remove children from this area. And Peterson's basically questioning that. So, this is an area outside of his profession, and I can understand why other psychologists may be bothered by statements like this. This one here, there are also notes from an interesting conversation that appears to be between a licensed psychologist, name redacted, and a case manager at the College of Psychologists. In it, the caller says that if they did 1/10 of what Peterson has, people would be all over me. So this goes against the idea that Peterson is somehow being targeted because he's a public figure. This person here is saying, in fact, it's the opposite. Because Peterson is a public...
Yeah, that's what I think is the most rational read on this. It's the same thing with Twitter protecting libs and TikTok. He's so big, he's so high profile, and obviously, again, diva, they know that he's just going to have to be like turning this whole thing into a cause and an issue. So it's like, you know what, why don't we say that we'll offer to give him a course or something, just so it looks like we're actually taking some of this feedback in from these very clearly egregious complaints in relation to
that this regulatory body is afraid of the backlash, which is why it's taken them this long to actually address this. And this screenshot. So again, I linked to all of my practice. I think it's fair to say yes, because they could. But it is a question
absolutely
worth bringing up. And I would...
Oh no, I think 100% he should have lost his license a long time ago. I think he behaves in a way that is distinctly against the very ethics and principles of the institution in which he's trying to perform, a potential therapy to people. Like if you are in a field and you're like, well, I agree with aspects of my field and profession, but then there's other aspects which I'm going to outright deny and say are a form of mutilation and torture and all this kind of stuff. Like that's not good. It's totally normal for a licensing body. Like, I'm sure they let it go on for a long time too, because he wasn't practicing. It's like, well, yes, we're not technically really putting people in direct harm, maybe indirect harm, but not direct harm, because he's not seeing clients where he could potentially, say these kind of things too. But in terms of indirect harm, there could be an argument for that.
Why would anybody who is trans go to Jordan Peterson? Like, I don't think that's... But still... Within the profession, you don't want someone like this as part of, as one of your members. I totally understand that. And just the too long didn't read. Jordan Peterson has made explosive allegations. He's being re-educated for political views, but the screenshots paint a very different picture, one of concern he might harm the mental health of the people he tweets at or about. What do you think? So, a few last points here, because he is, of course, pushing back against this. Peterson's court application for a judicial review argues that the college's disciplinary measures were unreasonable and unduly infringes upon his free expression in contravention of his charter rights.
Okay,
Peterson's public statements do not relate to the practice of psychology or political in nature and fall within the core of protected speech. So, look, some of this you can debate, whether it falls within protected speech or not. But
yeah, I would say if Jordan Peterson is making political statements about Trudeau, I'm not really that bothered, to be honest, in terms of, like, should he retain his license? Like, in that case, I would say, like, that doesn't really play directly into his field. I mean, it's certainly yikesy, but it's, like, it's not unusual for someone in a field to not, like, they don't have to be ideologically, politically aligned with me to think that they may give me a good form of medical attention, right? So, like, if it's like, okay, he's making some yikesy tweets about the trucker occupation and stuff like that, sure, but, like, that's not really, like, you should lose your license. If you're making the amount of fucking bigoted statements that he does towards trans people on a regular basis, again, directly flying in the face of, like, all major medical conclusive agreement on these fields and practices and issues, then yes, absolutely. Like, that is... It's the same thing applies to, again, if an airline pilot, was a monstrously huge advocate for, like, doing 9/11s. You know, like that would be a weird ass thing to be like, well, this person is constantly talking about how great it is to drink and drive and making videos about it. And they're super famous and they're making lots of videos about drinking and driving and flying planes and stuff like that. I mean, they don't fly a plane anymore, but it's just kind of weird that we've still given them their airline license while they're doing this. I mean, maybe we should rescind their airline license because at this point they are engaging in behavior that, again, is directly potentially harming people who are in a field of work that we do. So that maybe this is something we should do.
But we're political in nature. No, sure, maybe calling Gerald Butts a prick, you know, one of Trudeau's guys, like, I guess maybe a complaint about that is political. But when it comes to your comments about overweight people and saying how they're not like just stuff that is just so absolutely ridiculous, especially as a psychologist that should be aware of eating disorders, not to mention his countless inflammatory remarks about trans people. I mean, there is stuff in...
Yeah, it is really weird that he's just got like this really big hang up for, you know, plus size women and has to constantly talk about it. A lot of people on the right do. It's like this thing where it's just like, you feel as if you're somehow being forced to see this woman on the cover of a magazine. And it's like, how is that actually impacting you though? Because like, you could not be the target demographic. You could also not buy it. You could also just not be a reader of it. It's not as if this has become the new standard that every single magazine now features. Like every magazine is featuring plus size women. Like your ability to enjoy whatever you consider hard bodies is not really diminished. Like you can still get out there and buy all the hard-bodied magazines you want and enjoy them and then just go off about how that's the opposite of authoritarianism or something because you're like jerking off to all these fucking sports magazines. Have at it. You can do that. You also just don't need to make it everyone else's issue that now all of a sudden this one particular instance upsets you. Oh God, look at her body. It does not tempt.
There that is not political. It's simply about human rights and human decency. Human rights, human decency is not political by nature. Rising.
Yes. David Dole is correct. And you know what you should all do? You should go subscribe to David Dole. He's 1/6 of the Leftist Mafia. You can see him every Thursday on the Leftist Mafia when we do the Leftist Mafia. It's fun. Do you enjoy listening to the Leftist Mafia or watching it? Would you like to do both at once? You can do it on podcast form if you go to the Serf Times podcast. Every episode of Leftist Mafia is uploaded there as a podcast in high quality, and it's just as sexy as it sounds. So go enjoy that sweet, delicious content. Do you enjoy the Serfs but prefer not to have to use your eyeballs? Many are saying this. Well, we've got the solution for you. It's the Serf Times in podcast form, available on most major podcasting networks now. If you enjoy it, please consider leaving a good review and feedback because it really helps the show out, apparently, and it's free, just like the podcast.
To our gods, Xander Corvus and Peyton L. Juste, we shall spend many a generations building mighty cathedrals in your honor. To our monarch, Tom Spiker, we are but your oafish jesters, here to offer you a laugh at any opportunity. To our brave knights of the Round Table, Rachel K., Izzy Solidarity, Victoria Bell, Sebastian Demmel, Mark Harmon, Benji Arney, Scary Earth Human, Tony, DM Rivera, Resident Scarecrow, Sir Nickus, Cheryl Alvarez, Ruby Kelly, Brandon, Words Greenwood, Everything Important, Hegbert Celine, Matthew Scarborough, Stellar Vision, Ariane McCarthy, Doug Cady, Daniel Sutton, Jenna Tao, Dark Puppy, Quiet One 85, Anna Loves Riley, Omni, Riley and Anna, Poodlehawk, Multimondi, Trevbot EXE, Brian Ephraim, Anthropophojack, Catherine, Ramon Acosta, Nkosin, Ralph Parler, Violent Orchard, Political Puppy, La Media Panza, Todd Buckingham, and Todd La Jeunesse. We salute our valiant heroes off to fight injustice everywhere.